Welcome to Rauta's Black Metal Reviews. This time it's all about primitive and raw black metal from Portugal. Those of you who are familiar with the Portuguese scene of modern days are pretty much aware that Portugal is one of the leading countries when it comes to raw and primitive black metal. While those two are sometimes a kind of a synonym to one another, it's more case than the point here is not so often it also means they are two different breeds. Some of them do very primitive riffs, might not sound too raw in terms of production, and sometimes it's vice versa. But I guess it's quite safe to say that mostly it's exactly the same thing. When you have very simple riffs and old school fashion kind of approach to black metal, you also tend to have rather lo-fi production. That's anyway the case with Vetala, a band that has been here out for quite some time, and most of their releases, as you can hear, see on the Metal Archive site, is all about splits, EPs, demos, whatever. But there are also full albums out there, three in fact, and the first one of the demos is from 2007. So roughly we can say this is less than 20 years of age, but more than 15 years by now. Our official date of when this was founded is not at least known to Metal Archive site. But what we do know about this band is that it's made of two guys, more or less, and the style is indeed raw black metal. Why do I know this even before this particular split review, or not split review, that would be a little bit misleading, but dual album review is that I have previously reviewed some of their material. For example, that Burn Your Head with Satan EP of 2020, and that was a bad one. This time, however, I have two albums which are reissued. The first album is 2010 album Satanic Morbid Metal, which is actually quite good of a title, and that not so good title, Retarded Necro Demential Hole from 2018. These were re-released in 2022 by Signal Rex, the leading name of Portuguese black metal, and in general, I guess, leading name in raw-sounding primitive black metal. So since we have two albums out, I guess it's safe to just click them through here and while I guide you. Satanic Morbid Metal is the first album, and indeed already kind of a showcases what this band is all about. Raw sounding black metal and with a typical approach, 40 minutes, 9 songs. That means not too lengthy ones in terms of individual songwriting or the album, and nothing too short and sweet according to grindcore style. This is very, very much the basic kind of approach what you have to a raw sounding black metal. It's very, very lo-fi, it's raw and dirty, rusty, moldy, kind of like we dug up this from the cellar and basement with some rotten dead bodies and all that stuff, and you're pretty safe to then just approach the band. Nothing mind-blowing here, nothing new or exquisite or just extraordinary. It's just raw black metal, very simple riffs and more nodding, I guess, even to first wave of black metal rather than any modern stuff. One could say contemporary crap, but you all know what's going on here. So something like very typical in the terms of the raw sounding black metal, lo-fi and all. But in terms of songwriting, that album isn't making waves. It's just not that good. I mean, there are nice screams in here. That by nice, I mean inhuman and all that stuff. But if you're thinking this could be the next Ildiarn or the golden era of Dogthrone, I'm referring to the early albums in Soulside Journey, well, you were expecting too much. Kind of a lukewarm experience in terms of raw black metal. I get their raw and all that stuff, but way too often it sounds they have improvised a lot of riffs. And a lot worse it goes when we approach this third album, Retarded Necro Demential Hole. I think this album title already nails what is going on. This time the songs are way too lengthy for this kind of stuff. I mean, there's tracks that are over 10 minutes, and the material here is more like 2 or 3 minute tracks. This sounds very, very much like it's improvised, spot on the rehearsal place or whatever. Production is very, very crappy, and that could be, something that you can deal with if you can only stand this kind of musicianship. But unfortunately, the songwriting here is very, very subpar. I mean, unless you're a hardcore maniac for raw sounding and primitive black metal, there's nothing for you to offer here. It's almost like seems like this is a bunch of demoed ideas put into an album. More like, hey, let's just jam around. I mean, I've been into enough of bands that I know what jamming is all about. You just pick the guitar, or maybe you're a singer or drummer, bassist, doesn't really matter. And then you just start jamming. You pick some riffs which don't necessarily lead anywhere, but you keep recording anyway because you just kind of want to soar, save your ideas for future use. This is how it sounds. I mean, I've been to many rehearsals when you just pick your instrument, pick your or do your vocals, whatever, and you just keep going, and you don't necessarily have strong idea of how the lyrics are gonna sound or how the riffs are going to go. So you don't even think about patterns. You just jam with the ideas, and drummer does the best to keep it up with the bass player, or guitarist, and vocalist probably just screams whatever there. You don't have to have words even. You just might have scream some random Satan or dungeon or darkness every now and then, and people are like, yeah, 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 it sounded totally good because you're not really pronouncing the words. You're just screaming your lungs out and all that stuff. Now, this could really work when in the rehearsal idea. I mean, when you have the riffs and you don't really have the patterns or melodies or whatever songwriting parts ready, you're just improvising to see what sticks. That could lead into a demo later on when you actually work on those riffs and patterns. But with this kind of stuff, the approach where you just have kind of a sloppy sounding stuff, I mean, you're not really playing tight. That's one of the problems with Vetala's later recording. It's more like, let's see if we can find a label that releases it. It's not even like we're so crazy with the raw black metal that, it's unheard for people. People who have been listening to bands like Iljan or Wonduro for that sake already know that there's a thin, you know, like thin line, like written water where it goes as it's good, like this is primitive, this is crazy, this is inhuman, and it's still good. And on the other side of that same line, it's like, this is just pure shit. I'm not saying Vetala is pure shit, but it's closer to shit than actual good album. And what I find funny or ironic in a way is that the band has gotten worse by the days. It's not like they have gotten crazier. It's more like they don't really care if the riffs are good. They don't care if there are no real words. It's just screaming and random words being shouted at. You really can't pick up the most of the words, so you don't really know if there are lyrics. They could be all just improvised vocal thing. Been there, done that, when I didn't have lyrics recorded ready for a demo. I pretend to know how this kind of stuff happens, and basically anybody can do this if they want to. Most people are just so self-aware that they don't let this kind of stuff slide all the way to the labels, and even more so, most labels even wouldn't release it. I don't know what's the deal here with these labels. Vitala has been operating with Signal Rex. I kind of understand. They lean on raw sounding, primitive, lo-fi black metal. What about the other labels? Don't know. And to be honest, I don't really care. My point here is, if you want to know Vetala, start with the debut album, but you really are going down the rabbit hole if you're going to go with their later releases. I cannot recommend this to anybody, but if you know you're a hardcore maniac for raw sounding black metal, then you don't really care what I have to say, so you do your own research like the saying goes. Links are provided in the description box, but you probably have to go for YouTube or other sources to actually listen to the music. And good luck with that. Bye bye.